Man, welcome back. Welcome back. I feel like welcome back calling an old sitcom back in the 80s, with Vinnie Barbarino and those guys. It's your guy, the one and only, the hostess with the mostest, Coach Tony, and welcome to the Pull Up Podcast Show, one of the fastest growing sports shows across the country on the internet, and I'm glad to have you. Make sure you do me a couple of things here. Like the show, share it with your friends, and more importantly, subscribe to the show. Tonight, we got a guest that's in his own element. I brought you college coaches. I brought you NBA guys. We brought you scouts. We brought you different people. We're now going to go on the other side of the ball. We're going to talk about the guy who kind of makes it all come together when you're watching sports. But before we do that, Val, you know what to do. Drop it.
It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. Val's the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So, I said Val's the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So, it's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So.
Man, welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast Show. Every time I hear that beat, it makes me just want to dance. We are on episode 116 tonight. We got a guy that's going to help us understand how they put together the world of sports as they bring it to you. This guy is absolutely phenomenal. One of my good friends, been known for several years. He is a radio host out of Max Sports and Entertainment. He has the #1 voice of sports talk radio in the city of Nashville on 102.5 The Game FM since 2015. And he's also anchored his own show at the current moment, Stillman and Company. Let's bring out my guy, the one and only, Jared Stillman. Let's go.
Oh, Coach, I'm so glad to be on your show, bud.
Man, I'll send you the check in the mail. That was a good introduction, man. Good intro.
Man, so excited. Man. By the way, that beat that we had to bring us on, I mean, how do I get one of those made?
Hey, I got some people for you. I can make that happen, man. That was real good. I told Val when we got it, Jared, I was like, wow. My guy put that together for me. I'm like, oh, the track is so good. I got my little granddaughter. She sings it to me all the time. It's funny.
No,
how you doing today, man?
I'm great. You know, everybody says this is the slow time of year, but I mean, I don't know about you. Like we got a hockey game that's been going on every night. Then we get basketball starting up on Thursday with the finals, the WNBA. More people have never cared about the WNBA than they care about it now. And so baseball, I mean, I'm a big sports guy, so I don't think this is a slow time in sports. I think this is an exciting time in sports.
Exactly. And I laugh at people sometimes, Jared. They tell me, oh, man, the NBA is going to come off and ain't nothing on TV. Are you crazy with the rise and the pushing of women's sports right now? And like I said, we're going to get into that. But, let's give these people some of the, we're a live show, sitting around the country. Man, I'm so awesome and glad to have you on tonight, man. I get an opportunity to kind of sit as an apprentice in your world. You've been around for a minute. Just tell everybody, man, give a little bit about your background. Let us know where you're coming from and how did you get up and get started in the game.
So, I mean, I got to tell you, man, I think this goes all the way back. I mean, it's almost like if we were to go over, how did you get into sports? How did you get into all of this? It's almost like, well, let's go back to inception when my mom met my dad, because that's like when it started, basically.
Right.
But in all seriousness, I grew up here in Nashville. And it's funny because a good friend of mine who does work with me, he works for ESPN.com covering the Titans, Teron Davenport. He's a big Mets fan. And he was at Citi Field this weekend when they inducted Darryl Strawberry into the Mets Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he was sending me pictures of like the monuments from the big moments where the Mets beat the Braves at Old Shea Stadium. And one of them was from, I don't know if you remember this, Coach, but years and years and years ago in the NLCS, the Braves played the Mets, and the Mets won on a grand slam single. And I remember that day, which was in 1999. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was 10 years old. The Titans played a noon kickoff against the New Orleans Saints. This was when we were, as a city, starting to kind of warm up to the Titans because, you know, they were the Oilers that had been 8-8. Nobody really cared. Now, all of a sudden, Titans started to win some games, and they played a horrendous first half at New Orleans. They came back. They won the game on a pick six. And I remember the whole day, you know, just sitting in front of the TV, you know, in my parents' house in Westmead, watching the Braves game, the Titans game, and then that long Braves-Mets game. My sister, who's years older than me, got so mad at my dad because he and I spent the whole day watching the games. She got mad about that and caused a whole, you know, it was a whole fit.
Oh,
and I go back to say that, like, it's like, man, when did you get into this? When did you? Dude, I should have known. I told Tehran this weekend. I said I should have known right then exactly what I was going to do for a living because, I mean, at the age of 10 years old, there I knew every player, I knew every game, I knew every team, and boy, I had opinions on things. So, I mean, I think that's really kind of where it starts. Is just growing up. I was a big sports fan. My dad was a big Atlanta Braves fan. You know, Nashville, we didn't have the Titans or the Predators. So we were not a pro sports town, but the Braves were on TBS. And my dad went to Georgia and was a huge Braves fan from back in the day when they were terrible.
Yep. Makes sense.
Braves every single night. And they were good. You know, this was Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz and Steve Avery. And they won every night. Justice and Ron Gant and Mark Lemke. And we watched every night. And so it really started there. And I've always been, you know, really into this stuff. And I think as I've kind of grown, you know, over the years, I've kind of been more into the why. You know, I think that sports talk radio, I don't try to be negative. I think some people think that it can be negative. But I think sports talk radio is usually viewed through that lens. And because I grew up an Atlanta Braves fan and a Tennessee Titans fan, skepticism is something that comes very natural to me because the Braves all those years had those great teams and never won except for the one time. So I'd say that, you know, coach is really where it started.
Man, I tell you, the Titans have great teams and they never won. So it kind of hand in glove goes together. And it's funny that you say that because at first I thought you were going to say Chicago Cubs because I'm a diehard White Sox guy, south side of the city. And the Braves and the Cubs were the only one here on GN. Of course, obviously the Braves, but WGN had the Cubs. So that's amazing. But Dad being a Georgia guy, that makes sense. Now, you have the opportunity to go to University of Louisville, correct?
Sure. But hold on. I want to stop you there. I want to say something about the White Sox first.
Okay.
Because when I was a kid, you know, I used to go, like every kid, you know, probably should if they're a sports fan. We went to that old Greer Stadium to watch the Sounds. I can't tell you how many Sounds games I went to in my life. And the Sounds at the time when I was a kid, they were the AAA affiliate of the White Sox. And
correct.
Coach T, I cannot tell you how many times I'd be watching WGN. First of all, I loved Hawk Harrelson. Like, he was my number two guy.
Put on it, boy, yes.
I mean, yes. He was my number two guy behind all the Braves guys on TBS. But there would be a time to get called up. And it'd be a regular game, you know, Saturday afternoon on WGN. And they'd say, you know, oh, so-and-so was 3-5 at Nashville before getting called up. And I'm like 7 years old. I'm running through the house. I'm like, Dad, they just talked about us on the White Sox game. And so I used to get real into that. You know, Robin Ventura was a Sound. Ray Durham was a Sound. Chris Snopek was the Sound. I mean, Maglio Ordonez was a Sound. Like, I got really into that. And so even though I don't care about the Sounds now, like, I go to the games, have a good time, but like, I don't care. You know, I always remember that like when I was a kid, that like, man, like seeing those guys get called up to the big leagues, like that was so, I mean, that was pretty cool. And then when I got a little bit older, we go to the games, we get autographs, you know, some of the really, really good players. Like I remember Bronson Arroyo. I don't know if you remember him, pitched for the Red Sox in the World Series when they broke the curse, and he pitched for the Sounds. And I got his autograph. I thought that was so cool. Orlando Merced was with the Pirates, which the Sounds are AAA affiliate. And I remember this. I remember Orlando Merced back in the day was like the dude. And here he is, you know, just walking around Bowl Greer Stadium. It's Orlando. So it was honestly, you know, I cannot, as we talk about where all this stuff comes from, I cannot leave out the sounds.
Now, did you get the same opportunity? Because our beloved Michael Jordan, see him, Madhouse on Madison tonight, baby, Chicago all the way. We got Summer League coming up. But Jordan, unfortunately, Pops got murdered, and he ended up stepping away from the game. We thought it was forever. Lucky it wasn't. And how ironic, and a lot of people may not know this, you know, even though he busted his last jump on Bryant, he should have walked away from the game at Utah on the flu game with the shoes on. But what a lot of people don't realize, he wore number 45 playing for the Birmingham Barons. So I'm assuming you probably got an opportunity to see him just come to Greer Stadium a couple of times. But a lot of people don't realize, too, he had 45 points in that last championship ring that we had that night, matched his number. So stuff like that was just completely just off the hook. And I'm a diehard White Sox guy. I'm talking about back in the old stadium at the old Kaminsky, watching Greg DeBull Lazinski and old Carlton Fisk when he was there, right? We talking about Ozzie when Ozzie was young, and Harold Baines, you know, and the Big Hurt when he was there. So it was amazing, man. Absolutely
the
amazing.
rats running around there at old Comiskey Park.
Right.
You know,
everything down on 35th. They come down on 35th and jump off on the L stadium right there. And then they turned it around and put us in the new, you know, U.S. Cellular. And, you know, we haven't been the same.
So I was 4 years old, I believe, when Jordan played. You know, the Minnesota Twins had a AA affiliate that I think is now the Round Rock team, which is now AAA. But
right.
they were the Nashville Express for like 2 years, and they shared Greer Stadium with the Sounds. So they were the AA affiliate of the Twins, and that was the team that Jordan played at Greer Stadium, was the Nashville Express. And I have this. We went to the game, but I remember it. All I remember is my aunt, my late Aunt Sandy, telling us, you know, that she was the one that got the tickets, and she was the one that was like, guys, guess what we're doing tomorrow? We're going to watch Michael Jordan. And I went crazy. Like the idea of going to go see Michael Jordan play baseball.
Not on a basketball court either. We're talking about on a baseball court.
So apparently the old story goes, you know, Jordan was slated the next year, 95, which we all know that he left because, you know, basically they were going to use Jordan as kind of the strike breaker. And Jordan said, look, man, I'm not getting involved in this. Like, I am not.
And I bought y'all a bus. I bought y'all a brand new bus, too.
he was not going to get involved in the strike. He was not. They figured when they tried those replacement players that they were going to get Michael Jordan to be one of the replacement players, and that people would watch these terrible replacement player baseball games over the regular players because of Jordan. And Jordan said, look, I've been a part of the players union in basketball. I am not doing this. And that's when he went back to basketball during the strike. But if the strike had never happened, Jordan would have spent 95 in Nashville with the Sounds. And so they renovated parts of Greer Stadium. They brought in all new cash registers and everything, thinking that Michael was going to be there for 50 or 60 games or whatever it was. And Michael never played a game as a Nashville Sound.
That is absolutely incredible. And we're dropping some nuggets, some knowledge here with my main man, Jerry Stillman, here on Coach Tony and the Pull Up Podcast show. You know, it's great, man. Make sure you like us, share this show, and more importantly, subscribe to it. You know, let me ask you something. So, you know, now it's giving you some insight, kind of like it was myself. I know exactly how you felt as watching those games, me coming up knowing I was going to be a basketball player. People thought I was insane because I was playing one-on-one with myself in the driveway with garbage cans. And we're talking about Chicago, you know, back in the day when I got to cut the fingertips out of the gloves, you know, just wouldn't be, you know, getting frozen outside. Mom's like, come on in the house. Like, no, give me 1 minute. I'm playing a game of 21 with Jordan. Who? I'm in the backyard, man. I've got, you know, Pippen Jordan in my head, doing everything with the garbage cans, man. So to hear you say how you sat down and start to watch as a kid and start to formulate that idea of kind of, hey, this is what I want to do for the future, and then made it, man, is absolutely awesome.
Well, now that I've started paying for stuff in my life, I now, you know, now that I'm a grown up, I now know, you know, I don't know how old I was, but my parents had a 2-car garage, right? And like a lot of garages, you know, there were the little like slits in the, you know, the garage door windows inside the garage door. And I was standing, and there was a, you know, brick right in between it. And I had put up a strike zone, and I was, you know, out there pitching in the strike zone. I let one get away from me, and it broke the window, like the glass window of the garage door. And I mean, this must have been like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. My dad usually got home around 5:36. My dad gets home. I was like, so, I did that today. And honestly, my dad, I mean, he wouldn't have that, trust me. But now that I know how much that kind of stuff costs, I'm a little surprised he wasn't more mad.
Right. Exactly right. So that's funny. Hey, listen, we're gonna take a break, finish in the first quarter here on the Pull Up Podcast Show. We'll be right back. We're gonna pay some bills. Be right back with my man, Jared Stillman, on the Pull Up Podcast Show. Well, let's pay some bills.
Are you a small business owner looking to grow? Introducing the KeySpot mobile app. I'm Cynthia McAllister, owner of the IT company Quality SAP. Since 2016, we have been supporting small businesses and help them promote and share their businesses, services, and events across the country. KeySpot is more than just an app. We are a network providing community. KeySpot, connecting communities and supporting small businesses.
Welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast Show with your main man right here, Coach Tony. Man, we got some people that's checking in with you tonight right here. Bella, baby, what's going on? Thank you for checking in. Wise, my man. Always wise choice. I tell you, Jared, I got the coolest name ever. His name is Wise. I tell him all the time, he's the wise choice. And, you know, if you guys got a question for Jared, make sure you put that in the chat line. Angelique, thank you for checking in tonight. You know, continue to talk to us. We on the Pull Up Podcast Show. Jared, let's jump into the now you are there. You know, you kind of know what you want to do. You know where you want to be. Now, all of a sudden, you get that family opportunity. And Louisville's a little chilly. It's colder than Nashville. But now you're getting to be shipped off to Concord, New Hampshire to jump in that first gear. Hey, how did that, you know, that was eye-awakening, first of all, weather-wise, but how was your mentality on that?
So, I mean, I would say this, you know, when I was in college, I went to college at Louisville. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I knew that I wanted to work in sports. And Louisville had a very good sport administration program. And it was an ESPN, the magazine, you know, back when that used to exist. And, and I decided I was going to be a sport administration major. And I was working in women's basketball because a coach of mine at my high school had played for a coach that was there at Louisville. And so I had the connection. So I was working women's hoops. We go to the national championship game my freshman year. You know, even though it was women's basketball, I wasn't a player, you know, I was still part of the team. And I really, really embraced that. You know, we were very good, very competitive. And so I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in sports. And we brought in, you know, our sport administration program brought in some teacher from UCF, I think, and he was considered like the guru. And he asked if anybody wanted to be a general manager. And I was like, I would love to be a general manager of a baseball team. And he was like, do you ever play? I was like, no. He's like, well, go get an Xbox because that's the best you're going to get as far as that's concerned. Now, what I hate about that is that at that moment in time, I was like, okay, he's the guru. He's right. I'm wrong. I don't, you know, whatever.
Right.
Baseball has gone the way now of all the guys that are GMing these teams. None of them played. They're all fat guys like me that are, you know, analytics and, you know, bull crap and everything. You know, we don't have former players GMing anymore. And so, you know, there's a part of me that, like, you know, wishes I didn't take that, you know, so literally. But I was doing a lot of broadcast work in college and I was pretty good at it. And I felt like, okay, this is kind of my calling. So in order to get a job, you know, I didn't know where anybody started in this stuff or how anybody, somebody that I worked with our women's hoops team, who is now an executive at the Orlando Magic. Her name's Becky Bonner. Her brother, Matt Bonner, used to play on the San Antonio
Florida guy. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So he was from New Hampshire. They were from New Hampshire. And he had a little show on this because he's the first ever, and I think only ever NBA player from New Hampshire. And so he had a little show on this tiny AM station. It's one of the oldest stations in the country, WKXL up in Concord, New Hampshire. And that was more of a news talk station, but they did a little bit of sports. And so I anchored the morning news there. I'd wake up at like 5 in the morning, drive 30 minutes in blizzards. You know, I don't like to drive if it snows a little bit right now, but I mean,
it's definitely a blizzard in New Hampshire. Yeah, New Hampshire is blizzard. And nothing shuts down. It's like Chicago. You push and keep it rolling.
I mean, I was sitting there driving, you know, like 20 miles an hour on the interstate. We got people flying down by me like I'm there. They must think I'm crazy. So I would do the morning news and, you know, a lot of stuff like there would be a website. You pull up the stuff, you know, 3 people today were killed in an accident along I-93 at this time, blah, 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 whatever. And then I did an hour of sports at night. And as miserable as I was, you know, I didn't really know anybody there. I was trying to make new friends. I mean, that part of the country, it's a great part of the country. It's beautiful during the summer. It is miserable during the winter. The people there are so different from the people in the South. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it's different. And so for me, it was like a total culture shock. And I would say that that's where, you know, I think I got a little bit of my spine as a sports talk show host of like, hey, man, like, if I think you're lying to me, like, I'm going to call you out on it. Because in Boston, they don't do the sunshine. You know, it's, you know, they don't like something. If they lose this finals, you know, people in Boston are going to go nuts about Brown and Stillman, call them losers and all kinds of, because that's just how they. And so I think I got a little bit of that there. And I was there for about a year. And I remember as I was kind of headed towards going back to Louisville to do radio there, I was covering the governor, Maggie Hassan, who's now a U.S. Senator from New Hampshire. She was the governor at the time. And I was covering an event that she was doing at some like wood chipping plant. And I was like, get me out of here. Like, get me out of news talk. And yet, without that experience, and Chris Ryan, the guy who gave me the opportunity, he's a big-time host there. You know, New Hampshire has the first presidential primary, so he was all on, you know, TV, Fox News, MSNBC, all of that, you know, talking about the New Hampshire primary. He's very in there. You know, I don't really try to go get the big guests, but in New Hampshire, he's, you know, getting Barack Obama, Mike Pence, and, you know, all that kind of stuff on it. Chris Ryan gave me the opportunity. That is probably the single most important opportunity in my career. Because even though I got a great opportunity in Louisville from Drew Diener, and I got a great opportunity here from Jana Hampton in Nashville, had I never had that opportunity, I don't know when I would have been able to get started. I know that I was good enough that I would have been able to get another job after New Hampshire. But Chris took a real chance on me, and I'm not even totally sure that I really, you know, gave him back in return what he gave me. But I'm incredibly grateful to him for the opportunity. And even though I wasn't there very long, I think there was a humongous impact that made on me as a host and me as a worker, as a grinder, you know, just to kind of see, because I was in New Hampshire, which was like kind of the minor leagues, but I was covering the Boston teams, which was absolutely the major leagues. And I I really, you know, had a lot of like envy, Tony, to sit there and say like, man, this is what I want to be. And I've always stood with me.
Man, I'm the same thing, man. I remember getting into your shows and, you know, and I know exactly what you're saying. By the way, your guy checking in tonight, Music City Beats, saying, my God, Jerry Stillman, he's a beast out here. So he's checking in with your Music City Beats. Appreciate it. My guy, JGR, Toronto. That's my homeboy. Got a chance to meet him. Jason, thanks for checking in. You guys got any questions for Jared tonight, make sure you put it in the talk line. But I know exactly how you feel because our late great guy, you know, I got here, all Chicago, Bears included. But when we got here in '99, I got a chance to meet my frat brother, good buddy of mine, Dennis Stallings. If it wasn't for Dennis Stallings, who connected me with different guys, and my first guy I got an opportunity to meet was Kevin Dyson. I'm gonna get Dyson on the show as well. Me and Dyson, we laughed about it a few weeks ago. 24 years now since I met him in '99, 2000, and we're up on the quarter century. But it wasn't until Frank Wycheck and Blaine Bishop, my guy, I talk to Blaine all the time. gave me an opportunity in the morning show with them a few years ago. If you remember when the Blackhawks and the Predators played in the hockey, and the Blackhawks beat them, and the Blackhawks went on to win NHL championship, and me and Wycheck had a bet. If the Predators won, I had to take them to dinner. But if the Blackhawks won, he had to fly me home to Chicago to the parade. So obviously, I got to go to the parade. So it's crazy. If there's one thing that you got to tell the young guys, my son right now, so I got to connect him with you. He's in the broadcast and mass media at MTSU. And if there's anyone watching who's got a young kid trying to get into this game, if there's one nugget that you had to give someone that's trying to decide whether they want to do this or not, what would that be?
My first nugget would be have higher aspirations. Like, you can do better than talk radio. Trust me on that one. But I think my thing is this. A lot of people come out to me and it's cool. Like, it's really cool when people come up to me and say, like, hey, man, like, my son would kill to have your job. And their son is like in the 6th grade or something.
Right.
And it's really flattering to hear that. And again, like, I mean, it's cool. Like, the 14-year-old me would definitely approve of the 28-year-old, now 34-year-old me. But
right.
Tell people when they say that, they'll be like, my son loves sports. He knows everything about sports. My son would love to do your job. I'm like, that's great. Is your son interesting? Because there are a lot of people who know sports. Like, it's a job for me. But again, like, I love baseball. I know a lot about baseball. I cannot play third base for the Detroit Tigers right now. I just can't do it.
Hey, or my White Sox, who's not doing well at all right now.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, so I try to say it very respectfully. And I mean, my thing would be like, there is an interesting element to this. There is an entertainer element to this. I mean, a lot of people, honestly, one of the things that drives me crazy about my job is that there are people that think that I make up my own opinions. I get worked up about them and that I do it, for show.
You definitely get worked up. I've seen you get worked up.
I get worked up. I mean, that's for sure, but it's never contrived. Like, I mean, the things that I get mad about, like I watch Titans on Sunday. I get mad. And what I'm talking about, that's what I think. Like, that's how I feel. And people say, oh, he just does that for ratings and he just does that for clicks. And it's like, no, dude. Now look, is there an element of it where I talk about it over and over and over and over and over again that I probably would do if we were going to dinner? I'd probably say it once and leave. Yeah. Okay. It's a show. Like, it's a show. Like, that's the point. But at the same time, like, you got to have some interesting in you. You've got to have some, yeah, you got to have some juice.
You gotta have that swag, baby. It's like that street swag. That's what your boy, Ole Miss 26, Ole Miss 26 checking in says, man, I love listening to Jared. What is his overall season prediction with the Titans? Because he said, he talks back and forth about him. He just wants to know, what are you predicting on the Titans this year?
So I went back when the schedule came out. I went back and forth on the win, the loss, the win, the loss, the win, the loss. And I came up with like 8 and 9. I think that might be a pretty good season. If we walk away at 8-9, if we walk away at 8-9 this year and say that's the quarterback, like if we know that they've got the quarterback, then I think they're in a good spot. And that's the most important thing I'm worried about for this year. I'm not worried about winning the division. I'm not worried about making the playoffs. I'm not worried about going to the Super Bowl. Now, if the Titans start off 6-0, that, my expectations or excitement level or whatever might change. But I just want to know that they've got the quarterback, because the reality in this league is it's the haves and the have-nots. And right now, they've been since, in all seriousness, like Tannehill was good, but the Titans find themselves oftentimes on the have-nots. It'd be nice to have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. It'd be nice to have Tom Brady. It'd be nice to have the next great quarterback. And I mean, with Levis, I'm right there in the middle. I could see it. I also could see him being a backup. It's all about, is he going to make it? Is he not? I don't know. But it'd be nice to have that guy at quarterback. And So that's what I look at this year. Instead of the record, instead of the winning and the losing, instead of that, I'm like, will we walk out of this year saying they've got the quarterback? That's all I care about.
Exactly. That's a huge question. And matter of fact, I've got Justin Allen and my girl Melody got a question for you. But we come to halftime real quick. You know, we got to go on halftime and take a break. Val, let's pay some bills. We're going to be right back on the Pull Up Podcast Show with my guy, Jared Stillman from 102.5 The Game, Nashville. Val, take it.
Tony, what would you like to ask Terrence?
Listening to that trailer, man, it was so cool. When you got a chance to get involved, what were your past experiences?
I haven't necessarily done narration and voiceover, but I am a songwriter and performer. Of course, I've done that for a while. And with this project, one, I'm not seasoned enough to know what high 8 tapes are. So I'm just pulling off of my experiences with elder people in my life and their stories and try to connect that bridge. So I just try to do that the best that I could. I'm happy with how it came about. I'm excited for people to start seeing it and seeing how over these many years it's come full circle, as John said.
Terrence hits on a great point. The spirit of the film is based on the spirit of the music and the times of the 90s. That was important that came across because that was a different frequency, back then. It was an exciting, challenging time where you felt the birth of a new musical movement was happening.
Ultimately, we actually shot in 13 different locations and had a cast of over 60 people. And then we had this tape, this project that was still in search of an ending. And for 30 years, I've lied and carried this on my resume as a film that I completed, but nobody ever asked me for it. But I'm just grateful for the fact that, I'm grateful for the fact that Wendell found these and just wrote such a brilliant narration that really pulled everything together and brought it to some peace after all these years of this unfinished project.
Man, we had to go in and get some of that Gatorade at halftime. Welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast Show with your main guy, the one and only Coach Tony, and my guy, Jared Stillman. Jared, you got some people checking in on you right here. Miss Melody said she's got a question. And my guy, Justin Allen, my coach, said, what's happening? Hey, Jared, thanks for being part of the show. Glad to see you. But Miss Melody wants to know, and I'm not even going to let you chop her down on this one. She wants to know, why did D-Hop wasn't all in for the Titans, and why would you alert the people when D-Hop isn't at his voluntary practices anyway? It took her about 5 minutes to make that decision.
So I got a text into the text line. This was, I want to say, maybe Wednesday. I got a text in the text line that said, hey, should we be concerned that DeAndre Hopkins scrubbed all Titans pictures from his Instagram? And I knew that he, wasn't at practice on Wednesday, the open OTA. I don't know who's at the OTAs they don't let the media go to. I only know who's at the ones that they don't go to. And so I looked at, again, I don't follow DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins and I have quite the odd history. But anywho, so I went on DeAndre's Instagram and I didn't see any Titans pictures. And I just was scrolling on down and I saw, one picture from 2021 with the Arizona Cardinals, and I was like, okay, I guess he did scrub it. So at this point, I'm starting to put together. I'm starting to say, okay, he scrubbed the Titans from his Instagram, wasn't at OTAs, and DeAndre's making $13 million. He's making $13 million this season, which is, we just saw a guy sign for $35 million today. Not to say that he's deserving of $35 million, but he signed for that's not good money. And if I'm DeAndre, I want some money for next year too. And so I was just kind of putting it together. I was just asking the question, should we be reading into this? Right. But the one thing that I do have to say is heaviest is the head that wears the crown. And so I say something like that, and everybody runs with it like Jared Stillman said. Oh, my God, Jared Stillman And then the morning show, which is also the top rated sports show in its time slot, now the
Right.
morning show
Right.
starts. So now all of a sudden, again, this is all Jared Stillman said, and the big bad Jared. So I'm like, I just asked the question. And then everybody gets mad. And it's just gotten to a point now, Tony, where honestly, like everybody gets mad. I don't care. Like you can't
gotta
be
let it
more
roll.
mad at me and for me to be
Exactly.
upset about it. Like I don't
Yeah.
care. So a lot of people got all worked up about that. Let me just say this. DeAndre Hopkins making $13 million this year. If I was DeAndre, I think I would want some more money for next year.
Sure. I mean, if you're looking at Jefferson, who just 130 million a day, 140,
140, 35 a year, and I think 110 guaranteed.
Correct. I'm D-Hop. I'm looking for some more of that too as well. But I used to love it, man, when you and my guy, man, Coach Reese, you and Jared in the gym on in the morning, man. How was that show? Because I thought that was one of the biggest shows in Nashville. You talked how it was, and the coach had that insight for you because he was a true Titans guy and all that. And then that show came to an end and right around the COVID before you end up taking off doing some things. And how was it working with Coach Reese?
Man, I'll tell you, you talk about, after he died, it was really rough on me. I'd had grandparents pass away and things like that, but I hadn't had anybody that I, was around every day pass away before. So this was the first big loss in my life. And I was talking to my parents and I was talking to my mom, and I asked my mom, I asked her, the first thing I said, I asked my dad, I said, hey, did you know that when Floyd died, that this was going to screw me up as bad as it did? And he looked at me and he goes, yes. He's like, yes, I knew. And then I was talking to my mom about it. My mom said, she goes, as a parent, you never get to pick who influences your kid.
That's
you
correct.
always hope it's the right person.
That's
but
exactly
you never,
right.
as a parent, get to pick. And she said, the fact that I knew that was the person who you listened to the most, that was the person who influenced you the most, gave me great comfort. And I've never forgotten that, because that's the best way to say it. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how much I miss Floyd on the radio, and we get into it sometimes. It had a great the hurt in the fan. We loved the Titans, and I think our audience knew that. We loved the Predators. I think our audience knew that. We loved ball, and we loved being around each other, and we loved cracking on each other. And I mean, I never took it for granted, and I'm really thankful that I didn't. That I never took working with him for granted. But it was I mean, incredibly insightful. The guy was an expert to experts. Like Nick Saban ask you what you think, but he'll ask him what he thought. Like that is the kind of relationship that he had. I mean, at one point, Nick Saban used to send him the junior tape, and he would watch the Alabama junior tape at $400 an hour. And he watched the Alabama junior tape, and he would give them feedback on, what rounds, so this is how the kids decide, like, should I declare, should I not? And he was doing that. He was the NFL's expert in the Colin Kaepernick collusion case. And at $400 an hour, he watched every snap to break it down, kind of. So again, this is an expert for the experts. And we got to listen to him every day, and I got to be with him every day. And I cannot tell you the amount of just life lessons that I learned from that man, and the amount of times over the last 3 years since he's been gone that I have been in a situation in my life, not football, in my life, where I've been like, what would the old man say here? What would the old man, what would he say, we should do, should not do, whatever. It honestly, it's the kind of thing where, like, if I ever have a kid, I'm probably going to name my kid after Floyd. Like, that's how much he meant to me. And I mean, we were so lucky to have him. And I really think that the audience, that I said this in a statement after he passed away, and I really meant it, which was, as much as you guys, the audience, loved him, I know how much he loved the audience every day, the Titan fans that supported him from the very beginning. And he was a really private person, T. When he got sick, he didn't tell anybody. He didn't even tell me.
Yeah, it was
I
big
found
shocking
out.
when they hit the radio. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the way it went down was this. I don't think I've ever told the story on the radio before, but the way it went down was this. So we were doing the show on a Friday, and on Fridays during the football season, we would do Floyd's 3 things. 3 things he wants to see from the Titans, 3 things he doesn't want to see from the Titans. So we're getting ready to do the segment. He takes a phone call and he walks out. He never does that. So I'm sitting here being like, Floyd just took a phone call. I really don't know what to say about the Floyd's 3 things. Floyd came back in, put his I said, was that Nick Saban? Was that Bill Belichick? And he was very, very close with Bill and with Nick and worked in the NFL with both of them. And he kind of gave me this look like, nah, hush. I was like, oh, okay, all right. So the following Monday, we did the pregame show on Sunday. They beat the Ravens in overtime. And the following Monday, he texted our boss and said, hey, I've got to have a procedure. I'll be out this week. So, okay. It was Thanksgiving week, 2020. I texted him, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Anytime that I'd get sick, he'd send me a text like, oh, is our tummy feeling achy today? So I sent him a text and I said, hey, hope you're having a good Thanksgiving, whatever. And he didn't text back. And I knew when he didn't text back, I knew something was up. And so I found out, I think everybody knows now, or at least everybody that would be mad about this knows now. His daughter-in-law told me, she said, hey, he's sick, he's this. So Floyd, the following Monday, sent a text into our boss saying, hey, I think it's probably best I resign. Thanks for everything. Wouldn't answer phone calls, wouldn't, so we're all out on an island. So, we're trying to figure, okay, can we talk him out of this? But we don't know what's going on. And so I was talking with Floyd's family, and eventually we decided to announce that he had resigned. They had approved a quote for a press release saying that Floyd had decided to retire. And so we announced that Floyd retired on the air. And of all the things, and I think you can tell, T, you knew this, you've known this for forever about how much respect I have for Floyd, how much I cared about Floyd. But that really was an unfair thing that he did to me that I compartmentalized in the moment because I said, well, he's the one who's sick. I'm not. So for me to be upset with him would not be fair. But I look back on it and I really felt like it was unfair to me that, these jobs on the radio, like I know people want these jobs. Like if I left, they would be flooded with applicants of people that would want to do afternoon drive in Nashville. I know that.
Sure. Yep.
And so this isn't like working a regular job, right? Like if you go to Lowe's hardware store, and this is nothing against Lowe's, but if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, the person who helped you yesterday might not be the same person who helps you today. But again, this isn't that job. This is the radio. You tune in for the same guys. So Floyd leaves the show and doesn't tell anybody. And so I'm out on an island by myself and everybody's asking what happened. And every time I talk about it, I break down in tears because it was awful. And I always felt like, well, he was the one who was sick, not me. So I shouldn't feel sorry for myself. And I think after he died, my dad really, really liked Floyd. My dad and Floyd really got along really well. They were about the same age. And my dad was almost always, any argument we'd have, he'd always take Floyd's side. But when my dad told me, he was like, yeah, man, like I was really upset with how Floyd did that. Like, then I realized, maybe it wasn't fair. And that was really, really hard for me to be on the radio every day with people asking about Floyd, wondering how Floyd was doing, wondering if Floyd would ever call in, and me sitting there with the knowledge that he has stage 4 esophageal cancer. Like I know he's going to die and I can't say anything, do anything about it. It's God works in such mysterious ways.
God.
And
God is good.
He got really, really sick at the start of the preseason. His daughter-in-law texted me. It was Friday night. The Titans were playing the Falcons in a preseason game. And she texted me and said that he went in for this big scan and it came back bad. And I knew at that point that it was inevitable that at some point he would pass away very quickly. And we went to Tampa. I did. Titans were scrimmaging the Buccaneers. The Bucs were the defending champions. And Tom Brady had a media availability. And so we're at the Tom Brady media availability, and they say, last question for Tom. And, Tom and Floyd knew each other from their days at the Patriots. And
Right.
so Floyd had been inducted into the Titans Ring of Honor at this point, and I knew he was sick, but most people didn't. And so I said, Tom, you and Floyd Reese worked together in New England. I was wondering what you think about him in the Titans Ring of Honor. And Tom goes, oh, yeah, Floyd Reese, great coach, great general manager. His teams were very hard to play against. He was a football lifer through and through. And spending time around him in New England was a lot of fun. And I sent that video of him saying that to Floyd's son. And,
Wow.
this was Wednesday. Floyd died on Saturday morning. And so this was Wednesday. And they said at this point, he would just sit on the couch, watch TV, didn't talk, wasn't doing any, whatever. They showed him the video of Tom Brady, saying all the nice things about him. And they said his eyes got real big and shot up, like when he saw the video of Brady talking about him.
Wow.
And so I know that at the end of his life, being inducted into the Titans Hall of Fame, the Ring of Honor, was so important to him. And then, moments like that, I'm like, I think that it's kind of a God thing, that he was able to see that, football meant so much to him. Brady's the greatest player who ever lived, and he would fight anybody who said otherwise. And so I always think about those kind of moments and how like it's all kind of meant to be a little bit, but I mean, it was really difficult. And then we did a show, this was still, even though people were moving around and about at this point in COVID, it still was a real thing, especially with the new variants that were out there and everything. And so he didn't really have a funeral. So his memorial service was a 4-hour program, the Monday on our show after he passed away. And
I remember the show.
We had Nick Saban on the show, and we had Pete Carroll on the show, and Mike Keith on the show, and Jim Wyatt on the show, and all these people that had huge Titans ties and NFL and football ties, and I very rarely do I do the show for the whole audience, for the entire city and what they care about and what they don't. That was the one day where I did that show for like an audience of 6. Floyd's wife Sally, his kids, his grandkids. That's pretty much it. And well, I tell you, that was a really tough show. And just one other thing that I would say about this is, around the same time, Mike Golick left ESPN, and Mike Golick had a quote somewhere in a story where he said that he and Mike Greenberg weren't really friends. That Mike and Mike had that great chemistry for all those years, but those guys weren't really friends. And I read that and I thought to myself, I worked with Floyd for 5 years. And at this point, I think I had been with Caroline for like 1 year. And Caroline and I were together for 2 years, and now she's doing a great job on our midday show. But I mean, the relationship that I felt like I had with Floyd and the relationship I feel like I have with Caroline, like I don't know how Mike and Mike couldn't have been friends. But I mean, had Caroline not been there, it would have been really hard for me to get through all of that. She was like 23 years old at the time, and she's a really great friend. And I don't think I've ever expressed that maybe enough. Just like I know it's a show and I know we're all characters and I know, but to have co-hosts who I care about as much as I do, and in turn, who I hope care about me as much as I think they do, I think that's a pretty special feeling. And I consider myself incredibly lucky.
Oh, yeah. You've been around some good people, man. And we're going to bring up the next point. When we come back, we're going to take the last break of the day with my guy, Jerry Stillman, 102.5 The Game here at Nashville, Tennessee, with your boy, the one and only Coach Tony on the Pull Up Podcast Show. Val has paid his last bill and get these people out of my pocket.
Are you a small business owner looking to grow? Introducing the Key Spot mobile app. I'm Cynthia McAllister, owner of the IT company Quality SAP. Since 2016, we have been supporting small businesses and help them promote and share their businesses, services, and events across the country. KeySpot is more than just an app. We are a network providing community. Key Spot, connecting communities and supporting small businesses.
Welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast Show. It's your guy, the one and only Coach Tony, with my guy, Jared Stillman, with it. It's been, speaking of changes, man, I've been going absolutely nuts. You and I have some minor conversations on this and that, and talking about the stuff that's going on with this NIL, and then obviously in the fall right now with NCAA, just lost a couple of big cases against West Virginia and Tennessee, and now this season starts an unlimited transfer, and then next year they lost another big case, and now they're going to split that $23 billion or whatever it is, $200 billion rather, and now everybody's going to get $25 million apiece. When you look at that and you take a look and you break it down, I'll give you my opinion. I want to hear what you got to think about it. Someone just asked me this weekend, Coach T, you're sitting down and you're the AD of this school. You're the Power 5, because I call it the Power 4, right? Because it's all 5, but there's no longer the Pac-12. They're gone. And eventually the ACC will be going, in my personal opinion. You'll be down to 3. Big 12, Big 12, SEC, and Big 10. But they were like, if you're going to get this money, how are you going to break it down? Well, we know that football, basketball are your 2 revenue-generating sports. So I'm thinking, if I'm an AD, depending on what school, I'm probably going to give football $10 million out of it. Basketball, I take 8, men I take 5, women I take 3. And if I got a good baseball program like Tennessee or Vandy or one of these guys, baseball probably be an extra 1.5, 2. When you're looking at the changes that are coming about, that are coming down the road, now we also got Title IX, and women's soccer and women's basketball is taking off. Where do you see, do you see the NCAA got this right? Do you see they got it wrong? Or what do you think that the changes really need to be in terms of fairness across the board?
So I think that what's happening was inevitable. I just didn't know when it would come. I don't know if there's a right answer for the NCAA. I think if the NCAA could have paid the players, I think they would have done it before now. But I think that they looked at it and said to themselves, if we do this, then how do we spread out the revenue equally because of Title IX? And it's interesting that you say, if I was an AD, I talked to Scott Corley last week, who's the Belmont AD, about this. And I asked him specifically, I said, okay, if Fox were to give out a $50 million check to Ohio State, because again, Fox has the Big Ten and Fox pays the Big Ten teams. And
correct.
I mean, could they give 40 to football and 3 to women's basketball? I mean, that's not, but if it's Title IX, would it have to be 25 to men's sports, 25 to women's sports? And he said, that's going to be a decision the courts have to make. And I think there's a chance that under Title IX, they're going to have to do that. And so at that point, it becomes, so volleyball and women's basketball at UCLA get paid the same that football does. And a lot of people are not, that's going to be a problem. And so I don't know exactly what you do with this. 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I was on the radio in Louisville. And this was a very popular topic. I don't know if you remember when Johnny Manziel and Todd Gurley got suspended for signing on.
Yep.
And we had this big talk about, so how do you pay the players? And it's like, well, you can't because of Title IX. What NIL did was NIL kind of made it so that the schools weren't the ones paying the players, so it didn't have to be equal. But the one thing I said then and the one thing I'll say now, all I care about is that I can sit my ass on the couch during the fall and turn on the big SEC game on Saturday. And all I care about is in March that I can sit my butt on the couch and turn on the tournament. And so I don't care if we pay the players $1 million. I don't care if we pay them $1 billion. As long as I can watch games, as long as we can get excited about the bracket, as long as I don't care as a fan. But to answer your question, I don't know the answer. I'm not smart enough. I'm not educated enough to know the answer as to what we're going to do with the NCAA and NIL and everything else.
That's incredible. And you looking at, speaking of that, we obviously know the 2 biggest names that came out of this year that had a hell of a run. And I like the young lady Rice at UCLA right there. She signed a Jordan Brand deal. and got some beats still to go along with. And then you, of course, had Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, who are now in the WNBA. So I did a show last week, and the show was titled pretty much on that, Jared, was, do you think or feel that these two rookies are being targeted, or do you think it's just welcome to the WNBA, a la Michael Jordan, a la Magic Johnson, a la LeBron James, whatever, because obviously we've seen the hit that Angel Reese took from Thomas last week and slammed to the floor. I thought that was a beautiful little WWF move she put on her. And then they showed today on ESPN that actually Caitlin Clark threw the elbow before she got chucked to the floor Saturday night. So do you think that these two women, because there are no other rookies, I'm telling you, I'm watching all the games, and I don't see the hype of any other two rookies being thrown out of bounds, trip, fall, hard picks, besides these two young ladies.
So I think jealousy runs rampant. I don't care if it's men's sports or women's sports. Like, this isn't anything new. I mean, do you remember when Johnny Manziel got sacked and they did the money sign? And I mean, so like, what are we talking about here? Let me say this though. So Angel Reese came out today and she said that everybody's making this about Caitlin Clark and that nobody's making this about her. And I laughed my butt off. Oh my God, I laughed my butt off. I was like, be more jealous. Be more jealous. She's the bad guy in the Rocky movie. Like, that's what it like, I think Caitlin Clark's great for basketball. I think that this rivalry between her and Angel Reese is great for basketball. I thought that the run that she had was great for women's college basketball. Her going right to the WNBA has been great for the WNBA. Like, I said this, had the Rangers won against the Panthers in the NHL, the NHL Stanley Cup final would have had New York versus the best player on the planet, Connor McDavid. And I think that would have been huge for hockey, just because having the Rangers in it would have brought so many more eyeballs to a game. I think hockey is a great game. I mean, I think it's excellent, awesome, but you got to have a team to get into it. Right. And so Caitlin Clark is that for women's basketball. And so, I mean, of course people are going to be jealous. I mean, Caitlin Clark is a competitor. She is the biggest name in the sport on day one. And there have been some great women's basketball players over the years that haven't gotten the kind of attention that she's gotten. There's going to be some jealousy there now. But I'll tell you, I don't think about this. We had a sports weekend where the NBA finals are set, where the Stanley Cup finals are set, mini camps are going on. And the second biggest story after Justin Jefferson signing for $140 million was a meaningless shove in the WNBA game that in an NFL game would have been a 15-yard penalty, and we would have said the guy that did it was a dummy. That's all it was.
And now we got a flagrant 2 and possibly, fines and all that. Because trust me, man, my boys, my guys took me through the ringer because they thought I was going nuts. I was a huge Caitlin Clark fan as she was coming through Iowa. And with me being a coach, I'm a fan of the game, and I'm a fan of the player. And as I explained it, my guys were talking. I said, hey, Steph Curry wouldn't be flying her out to Golden State and working her out, a couple of times a month in the part of his SC program if Caitlin Clark wasn't a true business. And I go back and extend what you just said. These two young women are going to be the reasons why the paycheck and the salaries go up. Like, A'ja Wilson, I love her to death, back-to-back. With the Las Vegas Aces, and then, of course, coming out of South Carolina, winning, and she got mad because Nike gave Caitlin $28 million. That ain't not Caitlin's problem. That's your agent or your rep. She was a freshman or a sophomore when A'ja was coming out of South Carolina, so no one even knew she was going to even be a pro, let alone a great pro. Now she steps up and breaks all these records, and she's coming into the league. And I'm stunned that Angel Reese even jumped up and said that today, because both of them are hot in the news. I would let it ride because she's making a hell of a way now too. And because of, I was listening to something 2 weeks ago, Jared, they talked about it took the NBA from 1960 to 1985, 25 years. And then a la Bird, Magic, and then with the coming of Michael Jordan in 84, then the league started to turn around, and the Sixers won with Dr. J in the next year in 85, 86, and all of a sudden the NBA was on its way. Do you think that's the same thing that's happening right now, going to happen with the WNBA? Because I'm hoping they give us a team here in Nashville, man. Trust me.
So I think that this could be big for the WNBA. I think there's a huge missed opportunity if Caitlin Clark is not on the Olympic team, because
Yeah.
I think that, again, you know, a lot of times we say, oh, this isn't a popularity contest. But in the case of why Caitlin Clark is getting the bigger Nike deal, it's absolutely a popularity contest. And think about how important Jordan and Magic and Bird and Malone and Pippen and Barkley and Ewing and those guys were for the dream team. I mean, I really think that, and maybe this will be 4 years from now where obviously Caitlin Clark will be on the U.S. Olympic team, but I think to ride the wave of the year that she's had, the WNBA stardom, you know, and put them in a Team USA jersey, putting her and Angel Reese on the same team,
Yes,
representing the country, I think would be
with Don
huge.
Staley coaching. With Don Staley coaching. Yes.
I mean, again, that's like Chuck Daly. That's like Chuck Daly coaching Jordan and Pippen on the dream team. You know, it's
exactly with Bird and Magic on the other side, that's rocking and rolling. And you know, and I tell you, it's been great. And speaking of being great, you know, I'm at my camp. You know, I'm over at St. Cecilia High School now, man, turning these young ladies around. And I've got my basketball camp going on this week, so I told them I'll shout them out tonight. See you guys tomorrow. Get some rest tonight. We're working hard tomorrow. But we were talking about some of the girls that were at the camp, Jared, are two sport people, basketball / soccer. And one of the young ladies, though, got me looking up some things today. Started talking about the NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League. And so I looked at the news, and boom, it was on the news tonight that these women just signed a brand new deal, $254 million to put themselves on Amazon Prime, CBS Sports, ESPN, and ION, which is where ION is got some of the WNBA games. But the amazing part was the league is only 3 or 4 years old, a little younger than the men, but they're starting to put between 10 and 15,000 people in the stands. Do you see the paychecks for these women in the WNSL? Do you see these paychecks will, you know, start to make this our, you know, because we know soccer is the largest sport worldwide, right? Then basketball second. But do you see the women soccer now with women's basketball would be the two sports that start to move the revenue line?
Sure. I think with women's soccer, I mean, I would go back to 99, you know, when they won the World Cup and Brandi Chastain took the jersey off right there. And I think that it's been a growing sport ever since. I mean, again, how many pro women's any sport do people know off the top of their head? But when it comes to USA women's soccer, everybody knows Alex Morgan, everybody knows Megan Rapinoe, everybody knows, you know, a lot of the greats over the years that have played women's soccer, you know, Julie Ertz, a lot of people know her, a lot of people. So like women's soccer, I mean, that has always been a big deal for the last 25 years in this country. I think that between that and women's basketball, what Caitlin has done, and I think, you know, again, live sports rights right now are the number one thing. The NBA's TV ratings are declining every year.
Yes.
And the money is doubling. I don't understand it, but the money is doubling. Like they can name their price for the NBA. And again, less people are watching it. So what's happened is, as the ecosystem is now demanding more live sports rights, it's like, well, we've got to get our hands on more rights, which means that the Pac-12 decided the exact wrong time to die. Because if the Pac-12 was looking for a TV deal right now, they'd get a huge deal from a TNT or somebody like that, because they don't have their basketball money anymore. But that's where these TV channels are trying to justify their carrier fees with cable. So they've got to get the live sporting events. And in this case, women's soccer, you know, their rights were up. It was ripe for the picking. Same with the WNBA, which is a part of the NBA's deal. And it would not surprise me if the WNBA ends up tripling their revenues on this new NBA TV deal.
I think they're going to do that, and I think they're going to do it right. You know, you got one of your fans here, Weekend Girl 62 says there's a lot of eyes watching right now. teammates have got to have each other's back. And if they continue to do what they're doing in the WNBA, and I think it's good because, Jerry, as well as I do, it's the good guy always is the one in sports is always the one people are watching, a la World Peace, right? Ron Artest, doing his thing.
Sure.
And those guys going up in the stands and fighting people. And I think that right now with Caitlin and Angel getting this and throwing it on is something. And you just mentioned about the NBA, and it amazed me what you just said. The money's doubling, the viewership is declining. So do you think, because I don't think it's ready, I've got some inside guys I talk to all the time, a couple agents that I deal with and whatnot. LeBron James Jr., this is the big talk. We went round and round on my show, and they didn't like what I had to say, but I told them, if I'm LeBron James Jr., and here's my take on it, you tell me if you like it or not. Because I'm like you get that Midwest and that East on you, man, you just tell it like it is. But I'm not even worried about the NBA. Pops has got my back. I make $13.5 million right now on NIL from Beast, Nike, and a couple other things. And my heart has not been tested. I'm playing 19 minutes a game, averaging a little over 4.5 points a game, couple assists. I'm playing behind Boogie. Boogie didn't get an opportunity to go to the pros. So I'm trying to jump over that scenario. And now I go from 86 feet to 94 feet in the NBA, and I go playing against grown men for 48 minutes. So I'm thinking that, one, I have not been tested. Two, excuse me, they're going to come at me. And if they come at me, I got to be able to deal with that, got to be able to handle that. Now you go in a situation, if I'm Bronny Jr., I know Pops may or may not want to be there and play with me, but I'm saying, man, I'm going to ride my 4 years out, $50 million in my pocket. I'm going to go to Uncle Rich Paul, say, make me an agent. I know my little brother's probably the one that's got the talent, going to come up. And I'm going to make my first client possibly Juju Watkins, my homegirl that I grew up with, and then throw my baby brother on staff and jump up in the agency. I told somebody that a couple of weeks ago. They thought I was insane, but I want to hear what you think about that with the LeBron James Jr. situation.
I think Bronny James is like the middle ball child, right? Like the one that stunk.
Oh, yeah.
Was it Melo? No, Melo was good. You know who I'm talking. The one that went to China and
yeah.
So I think that Bronny stinks. Like this idea that he's going to be a good, it's ridiculous. And so I think it's absurd. I think most people probably think that the Bronny stuff's absurd. And I would say this, if Bronny was still in college, I'd say, hey man, like he's a kid, like leave him alone. Like LeBron's right. Let him live his life. Once you decide you want to be a pro, this is how it works. And so if people are going to get on TV and say you stink, it doesn't matter that you're 18 or 19 years old. Bronny does not deserve to be in the NBA. He's going to be in the NBA because the Lakers are going to take him in the second round and they're going to put him together and it'll be made for TV in the summer league to see LeBron courtside to watch Bronny. But
yep.
Could you put Bronny out there and say, okay, you've got Kyrie? Because that's what you would be asking. And Bronny cannot guard Kyrie Irving. And so
he can't guard my home team. He can't guard my guy Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller, Nashville's own Brandon Miller. Come on, man. He should have been Rookie of the Year, in my personal opinion. But he's got some work to do, and and that's why I thought I would stay at USC. I'm already playing in the Big Ten. We're already going to get Oregon. We're getting USC. We're getting UCLA. Right? We're getting those Big Four, and we're getting Washington. So we get the Power Four coming out of the pack. And if I'm a recruit, I'm loving that because I can go to East Coast to Chicago and LA all in one season. So, I would have no rush on getting into the league. And speaking of the league, and talking about, you mentioned a moment ago about covering New Hampshire to Boston, I got the Celtics in 6. I think that Porzingis is back. He's going to be probably not 100%, Jared, but I think that we get an opportunity to bring him back and he can make some noise in there. I think that it gives Jaylen Brown an opportunity. Jason Statham, I think they played to get the three-headed monster back in there. And then you take the old man, Al Horford, take him off his feet for a little bit. And he don't have to give me 35 to 40 minutes. He can give me 18, 19 minutes a game, and I'm going to get more out of him. Who you got in this finals?
I'm going to take Boston. I think you're probably right about 6, 6 or 7 games. This is how I feel about the Celtics in this final. I don't think Luka and Kyrie, I don't think they're good enough to win a title. Like, if I were to think of them kind of where they belong, I would put them, this Dallas team at the same level of the Reggie Miller Pacers teams, right? Like, they were very good. They got to a final, but they didn't win. Shaq and Kobe, they were the champions. Michael and Scottie, they were the champions. It was like, those Knicks teams in the 90s. They just were never good enough to win. And so that's how I feel about Luka and Kyrie. But of all kind of at this point, the older generation is kind of phasing out, right? Like Giannis is, they're out early. Kevin Durant's out early. LeBron's out. Golden State's out. And so that era is kind of moving on. The new era is coming. Luka is certainly a big part of this. Anthony Edwards is a big part of the new era. The only group that I think is truly in its prime, that is like in its championship prime, Brown and Tatum. 2 years ago, I thought they were maybe a little early to the party when they lost to Golden State. Golden State was on their way out, but they still were kind of at the back end of that prime. And I think that Brown and Tatum might have been 1 year too young. Well, last year they choked against Miami. And this year, like, to me, this is, if Brown and Tatum have any chutzpah, they will win this championship. And so I'll go with the Celtics. And if they don't, I don't want to hear from Brown and Tatum again.
Oh, you've been in Boston. You don't have to worry about it, because by the time they finish cooking them up there, and they better be glad that they're not still playing in the old Boston Garden, right? Turn the pipes on. Turn the pipes on. Got to switch it. No air conditioning, exactly. Better make it and feel it how you do it, man. And I think that you're absolutely right. If they don't win, Missoula's got a great shot. He got an opportunity to get a job that he's going to probably end up being an assistant for quite some time, and then get thrown into a head coaching role. And now he turned around and made the best of it. And now in a young coaching career, got an opportunity to get a ring. That is absolutely phenomenal. And I think if they don't get that ring this year, Jared, they're going to break that team up. And unfortunately, it'll be a while before Boston has the opportunity, because, like you said, Luka and Kyrie's coming. They're only missing Lively. And I think with Lively getting hit in the head, on accidental with Karl Anthony Towns, and then get hit again Saturday. I think those 2 times in the back of his head with that concussion protocol, I don't know how much he can go. But if Porzingis is back, that's a definite threat. We now got a big man that can shoot the 3 better than Karl Anthony Towns and those guys. And we got Jason Tatum, and Brown doing their thing. So it's going to be interesting, man. Very interesting. If, tell everybody, man, how they can check you out, man, because they gotta hear some of this knowledge you're giving them every single day. So if they want to check you out on 102.5 The Game, man, and send you some information, ask you a couple questions, how can people get in touch with you?
Sure. So I'd say first and foremost, we're on Monday through Friday, 2 to 6 p.m. Central Time on 102.5 The Game in Nashville. You can stream it, however you like to stream. We're on YouTube and Twitter and Twitch and all that kind of stuff. Plus, we're, of course, we stream like a radio station. Podcast, anywhere you go, search Stillman and Company. On Twitter, at Jared, Jared, at Jared Stillman on Twitter. And send any questions, anything that way. We'd love to hear them.
Man, I appreciate you, man. And don't forget, man, you get those guys. And for those, I'm a big iHeartRadio guy. So I listen to you guys. I was out of town this weekend. I click you guys on between you and Blaine and all the guys. I click back and forth, and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's been great, man. Hey, man, I want to thank you for your time, man. I'm coming. I'm getting bits and pieces, man. I'm going to get up to the point I can be your co-host, man. I'm working on it. But definitely, man, I want you to come back anytime. Love to hear your opinion.
We can't afford you, Coach T.
Hey. Hey, speaking of that, hey, check out, if you guys are out there with a young kid, athlete that's coming into a situation out of college, graduating, and trying to make some good opportunity for themselves to get some brands, log on to my brand, The Rise NIL. We match athletes with brands and brands with the right athletes so that they're both satisfied on both sides. And tomorrow night, make sure you check in with Val, the voice, and myself as we coming in with Interludes Talk on Tuesday. And this month, we're celebrating the Black Music Month in hip hop and jazz and regular music and everything else. So if you want to listen and talk about music and its upbringing, make sure you check in on Interludes Talk on Tuesday, 8 o'clock p.m., streaming on everything. This has been a great show with my man, Jerry Stillman, and your one and only Coach Tony, baby, on the Pull Up Podcast Show. But you know my words. Peace.
It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. Bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So, I said bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So, it's the Pull Up